All right, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Crystal Leff Pignon. I am the Director of Family Protection Representation. I work with the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. And today we're here to do a training on both the Family Protection Representation Indigent Defense Expenditure Report, as well as the OCA Interpreters Report. So here with us today, I'll introduce everyone who's here in the Zoom room with me. We've got Deborah Stewart, who is our fiscal analyst. She is here to answer any accounting type questions that may pop up. If you need those questions answered. We also have Dr. Sarah Gamble, who is our Director of Research. She'll be answering some questions as well about the website if you have them. We have Alejandra Peña, who is the Director of Data and Research with the Office of Court Administration. And we also have Angela Garcia, who is also with the Office of Court Administration. Who's
Yeah. And I'm actually Sherry Woodfin. She just shared her link with me, so my apologies.
okay.
I'm with OCA as well, but I'm attending on behalf of Angela today.
Okay, I was gonna say you don't look like Angela, but I don't know. Maybe she changed her look.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Thanks for joining us. And then we also have Kenitra Brown, who is with TIDC. She's here to provide tech support. And Kristen Meeks is also at TIDC, also providing tech support. So a few housekeeping matters before we get started. We are in webinar format, so please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. The chat gets a little unwieldy, so we'd prefer you not put your questions in there. We can keep really great track of using the Q&A. So please ask your questions. We're happy to answer anything you have. Just please use the Q&A function. We will answer questions at the end of the presentation, but feel free to type in your question as we're talking. We're keeping track of everything. We'll just wait to answer them at the end. And other just general housekeeping matters, we are still doing some trainings the rest of this week for our new website. So tomorrow at 10 a.m., there will be another training on the Criminal Juvenile Indigent Defense Expenditure Report. Again, that's at 10 a.m. tomorrow. It will cover similar information that we covered in our last training on the Criminal Juvenile IDER. So if you've already watch that one and you don't have any questions, you don't necessarily need to watch it. But if you want to watch again, get a refresher, or you missed the last one, we are doing another training tomorrow at 10 a.m. We are also doing a training tomorrow at 12 on the attorney practice time reporting. That's also new on our website. So attorneys who have to do their attorney practice time report, they can get a training on that tomorrow at 12. Tell your lawyers in your county about it, share it with all your county stakeholders, or if you're curious about how to do that report, you can certainly join us tomorrow at 12. Other things to know, oh, and all the links are in the chat right now. So if you want to register for those trainings, you can go ahead and use those links and get registered for those. All of the materials that we will be providing for training and education about the things we're talking about today will be put on our website. We do have an IDER manual that will be coming out, an updated version to match our new website. That will be on our TIDC website. You can catch it there. I believe if you've attended today and registered, you'll also get an email with that information. And then all of the trainings that we're doing are being recorded and will be put on our YouTube. So if you have to leave early, or if you miss something, or if your friends are asking you, everything will be posted on YouTube. So don't sweat it if you can't get to everything. So I think I covered all the housekeeping. Okay, good. So let's get started with our presentation. We've got a little bit of a presentation to go over, and then we will have plenty of time for questions for everybody. All right. Does that look good, Kristen? All right, great. Okay, so everyone, again, thanks for joining. Today, our presentation is going to cover the Family Protection Representation Indigent Defense Expenditure Report. TIDC is going to cover that piece of it, and this will be for the fiscal year 2024 that's coming up, that's due soon. We also are going to have a section at the end of the presentation about the new interpreters report. The Office of Court Administration is going to cover that piece of the presentation, and they're also here to answer questions that you might have about it. I will let everyone know, if you attended the session on this a few weeks ago, we're covering the same information. So if you were able to watch that entire presentation and you have 0 questions, you don't necessarily need to stick around unless you really want to. But it will be same information. But feel free to ask any questions you might have. I know a lot of people watch a training and then following that have some questions. So we're here to answer those. All right, so what are we going to cover today? We'll talk a little bit about TIDC, who we are, what we do. We are going to discuss the legal requirements for the Family Protection Representation Indigent Defense Expenditure Report. And going forward, I'm just going to say IDER because it's a lot of syllables and it takes a long time. The big bulk of this presentation is going to be how to use our new website. We're super excited about this. For those of you that have done this report before, you're probably familiar with our old website that it was great. It worked great when it was developed about 20 years ago, but we've created a whole new website that we hope will be a lot easier for everyone to use. We will discuss the different reporting categories for family protection representation. We're going to talk about how to count appointments for family protection representation. That is different from counting cases. We're going to talk about the importance of accurate data reporting and why this matters. We realize you all are very busy and you have a lot going on, and we're not just asking you to do this just because we want to put one more thing on your to-do list. There really is a method to our madness, and there's a reason why we need really good data. Give you some contacts for how to reach out to people at TIDC, and then we will hand it over to the Office of Court Administration to talk about the new reporting requirements for interpreters. All right, so who is TIDC? Some of you have worked with us for a while or are probably familiar with us. If you're newer to your work, maybe you're not so familiar with who we are, but we are real people. This is most of our team here on this photo. Everyone's really nice that works here. And what we do is we work to improve the indigent defense systems in the adult criminal defense space, juvenile justice, and family protection representation. Family protection representation is pretty new. We've only been doing it for a few years. And for those of you that are new to this, when I talk about family protection representation, what I'm talking about is court-appointed legal representation for children and indigent parents who are involved in child protective services cases. So you'll hear CPS cases probably in your county. That's what I'm talking about when I use that term. How do we do this? We do this through funding, oversight, systems building, and technical assistance. So funding on the family protection piece of it, we don't have it yet, but we're very hopeful that we're going to get something hopefully during this next session. Oversight are things like collecting data, going into counties, checking and seeing what's going on, making sure that the laws are being followed. TIDC's done a lot of really amazing work to help build systems, build public defender offices, indigent defense coordinators. Some of you all may have those in your counties. And then we also provide a lot of technical assistance to the counties to make sure that everyone's meeting the law and doing the best that they can under the circumstances they're working under. All right, so why do you have to do this for family protection representation? It's technically legally required. The law can be found in Texas Government Code Section 79.0365. This was added last section following Senate Bill 2120, and it essentially moved over some previous reporting requirements over to this section of the government code. So what you have to do is you do have to report your expenditures every fiscal year. This is just like in criminal and juvenile. So you're going to do this every single year. Your county auditor, or in counties that don't have an auditor, whoever's designated by the commissioner's court, is responsible for submitting the IDER. The law says that the information submitted is supposed to show the total amount that was spent by the county to provide family protection services and an analysis of that amount. But the way that you submit it, so the form and manner of the submission, is determined by TIDC. So that's where our big website comes in. So the website we've created and the website we've used in the past, these are all the form and manner, if you will, that comes from that law about how to submit the information. So let's talk about our new website. Again, many of y'all have heard this, but in case you haven't, we do have a new data website. It's a big change, but we're hoping it will be a big change for the better. There were some things on our old website, a little quirky, made things a little bit hard to use. For those of you that have done the report in the past, a lot of people couldn't find the family protection report, and we had to use that little pencil, if you remember the pencil. We do not have the pencil anymore. We've completely reorganized the website, and we're really hopeful that it's going to be a lot easier to use. But it's new, so just be patient, give yourself patience. Anytime we do something new, sometimes, you know, change can be difficult, but we do think it's going to be a lot easier to use. So where is this new website? There is a new address for the site. It's here on the screen here. This website is not currently open though. So I want to make that very clear. I am sharing the address with y'all, but if you go to it right now, it's not going to work. Okay, it will be available on October 1st. So if you go to the site now, it won't work. Don't call us in a panic. Your website doesn't work. It will work on October 1st. But I want to give it to y'all now so you have it. I know some of y'all early birds are going to want to get in there and start working now. You can start entering your information beginning on October 1. For now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a bunch of different screenshots, get you familiar with what you can expect to see when you go to the website. All of my screenshots were taken from a test site. So you can see on the screenshot here, there's this yellow bar that says this is a test site. You are not going to see that when you log in to your site. You're going to see the live site. It won't be a test site. But just for example purposes, I'm using things from the test site. So when you go to this web address, when it's functioning, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see, this is kind of like the welcome page to the portal. You're going to see different types of reporting. We're only talking about the IDER, but when you go to this homepage, you'll see the IDER, you'll see indigent defense plans. Those are things that judges have to do, so don't worry about those. And then you'll see attorney practice time report. And those are things that attorneys in your county who accept court appointments need to fill out. But if anyone's asking, how do you find the attorney practice time report? That's where it is as well. So when you get to this homepage, over to the left on that blue column, you'll see a spot to log in or to request a new user. And that's where you'll go to kind of start entering the site. All right, so really important, user credentials. We want to be very sure that whoever is logging in and entering information is logging in as yourself. So we know that in the past on the previous website, a lot of people would share usernames or passwords. So you would maybe log in as your auditor, if you're staff in the auditor's office, or as your coworker or something like that. We don't want to do that anymore. So please make sure that you're logging in as yourself. So if you have a username and password from the previous website, you can still use the same username, but you're going to have to get a new password. So what you'll do is you'll go to the login function on the new site, and then you'll just say forgot password to get a new password to log in. But you can still use the same username. Now, if you have no username and password, some of y'all may not have one. Maybe you've never logged in, or maybe you've logged in as someone else. Please retrieve a username and password as yourself. And you have that function on that site. You'll see register user and you can get that information there. So that's really important. All right, so once you're logged in as yourself, you are going to come to what we're calling the dashboard. Now, this is the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report dashboard. And you'll see that this looks pretty different from the old site. We now have it broken up into the adult, criminal, and juvenile delinquency section, family protection representation, and then you'll see the interpreter's report there as well. We're only talking about family protection today. Tomorrow, there will be a training on adult, criminal, and juvenile, but for now, we're doing family protection and the interpreter's report. And then you'll see this other box down at the right, the submission status. Those statuses will change depending on where you're at in the process. But this is what you can expect to see. All right, so once you click on the family protection representation module, you're going to see this. You'll see these 3 different boxes. And at first you're going to see these red X's. It's supposed to look like that. Don't panic. You'll have red X's because that means you haven't done anything with them yet. The colors will change as you move through the site. So let's talk about confirm current user. Everything here is going to be a little bit different from the past, but we're hoping that it's just easier to use. This one's pretty self-explanatory. This is asking if you are who you say you are. So going back to that whole get your own username and password, This again is asking that information. We are going to ask that you confirm your contact information and make sure that this is you. And then we're asking, is this you? Right? So ideally it's you and you say yes and you move on. If it's not you, you're going to answer some more questions. The buttons down at the bottom, so they're all very self-explanatory. You can use the red button back to checklist. That'll just take you back to the checklist. It won't save your information though. If you just hit back to checklist, it's going to kick you back. Nothing will save. If you want to save it, so let's say, I don't know, you get a phone call or something, and you can't finish this. You can hit save progress and it'll save your information. Now, if you're done, because this one's pretty easy, you can probably click through this really quickly. You can just finish it out and hit complete step. It'll complete the step, it'll save it, and then you'll go back to the checklist. All right, confirm contacts. This is hopefully another fairly easy one to fill out. We just want to make sure we have the correct financial information for your county. We know sometimes things change, people leave jobs or retire or whatever might be going on. So this is to confirm that we have the right financial officer listed. And if we don't, you can fill out the information. And then we also want to know, who do we follow up with on the report? Because when we go through the site, staff at TIDC every year, we go through and review all of these reports and make sure they look correct. If we have questions, we want to know who we should call or email. So that's an important question to make sure you fill out correctly as well. Every box you go to, you'll see those same 3 buttons at the bottom. They do the same thing that we talked about, the back to checklist, save progress, complete step. All right, so then the next module you're going to see on that checklist is the method of family protection representation. This is new. You never had to answer these questions before, but we think this will be a lot more helpful in getting the correct information. And it's important that you answer these questions correctly, because it will determine what you see later on the website and what you're able to fill out. When we say method of family protection representation, what we're really asking is, how does your county provide lawyers for kids and parents in CPS cases? And then how do you organize this information? That's pretty much what it means. There's different questions though. So that first question, does your county use assigned counsel? Everyone's going to say yes. I'm pretty positive. I think every single county in Texas is using assigned counsel. And most counties in Texas are only using assigned counsel. So if you only answer yes to that question, that's okay. That's probably how it's working. But we have more questions underneath, because there are some counties that do also provide representation in other ways aside from assigned counsel. Assigned counsel are just your private attorneys who are on a lot of times called the wheel or the list, and they take court appointments in these CPS cases. The next question is about contract attorneys. A handful of counties are using contract attorneys. What is a contract attorney? That is an attorney who is paid a set amount, either by month or maybe even by year. No matter how many cases they have, it doesn't matter how many cases, how much work it is, they get paid the same amount because there's some contract between that lawyer or law firm and the county for doing this work. I will also add, you might see these little green check marks on the page. You're going to see those all over the website. Those are called tooltips, and those will give you information and details about the question we're asking. So if you're reading this and you're like, I don't know what a contract attorney is, you can hover over that little green check mark and it will give you a description of what we're talking about. And you'll see those all over the place. And those are really helpful if you have questions about what we're asking. The next question, this is very rare. I think we might only have one county that does this, but we have it on here just in case. This is asking if your county has a full-time employee that handles family protection who is not employed in an office of child representation, parent representation, or public defender office. So this is someone who is truly a full-time employee. They get a salary, probably benefits. You know, they're treated like any other person who's employed with the county. They're providing representation to kids or parents or both. And they don't work in one of these other offices listed. This is very rare. So if you say no, that's probably correct, but we have it on here just in case. The next question is about public defender offices. There are still quite a few counties in our state that don't have a public defender office at all. If you don't have a public defender office, don't worry about it. You're going to say no. If you do have a public defender office, there are a a handful of counties that are doing family protection representation. There are many that don't. So even if you have a public defender office, you're probably going to say no to this. But we do know for sure Dallas County, El Paso County handles family protection representation. And as we move forward in this work, we expect that there may be more public defender offices that decide to pick this work up. But just keep that in mind. You'll need to know what your county is doing. The next two questions are pretty rare. There are statutes in Texas that allow for what's called an office of child representation or an office of parent representation. Those are what they say they are. An office that represents kids or parents in CPS cases. For now, we think there's only one of these in Travis County. So if you say no to that, that's probably also correct. This next question's very important. This is where we're asking about your system to organize expenditures in family protection cases. So for those of you that have been doing this for a few years, you might remember that when we started this back in 2021, we only asked for total amounts expended and total appointments. It was just total, no breaking it out. But then in 2022 and 23, we began to ask that this information be reported in different categories. And I'm going to talk about those later in the presentation. But those are the things y'all might remember: the custodial parent, non-custodial parent, etc. We have these different categories. Most counties at this point are able to report that information in those categories, and that's great. That's what we want. It's very helpful and very important that a county is able to report in that manner. However, there may still be a small number of counties that are struggling with getting their information organized in that fashion. Maybe your attorneys aren't filling their vouchers right. Maybe your judges aren't requiring attorneys to tell you who they're representing. Whatever the issue may be, if you are unable to report your information in the categories that we're requesting, you're not going to be able to fill this report out the way we want you to. So if you don't have a system, you're going to have to click no, unfortunately. And I just want to make it clear, this is not like, we certainly don't want to encourage people not to have a system. We do want everyone to have a system, but if you just don't, you're going to have to click no because you can't fill the rest of this website out. If you do have a system, you'll say yes and you'll just move on. If you don't and you click no, this is what you're going to see. This will pop up. You'll see total expenditures and total appointments. And you're just going to type in the total amount you spent and the total amount of appointments, and that's it. And you'll be done with that. Again, we hope that at some point, no county will do this. At some point, every single county will be able to break their expenses out as we've requested, but this is here just in case you don't have it. All right, so once you've gone through those first 3 modules, then your checklist is going to change. So now you see I've gone through the confirm current user, confirm contacts, and the method of family protection representation, and then it gave me more modules. Now, most of y'all are only going to see court reports because most counties in Texas are still only using assigned counsel, and so you're only going to put that information in court reports. I've messed with this example here so we can see the different addendums. So you'll see the Office of Child Representation, Parent Representation, Public Defender, and County Employee, but many of you aren't going to see those at all, and that's okay. But this is just for example purposes. All right, so everyone's going to need to go into this court report section, and so here's an example of what you'll see on the court report. Now, the number of courts you're going to have listed is going to really depend on how many courts you have in your county. Some of y'all are going to see a very long list, and some of y'all are going to see maybe just 1 or 2 courts. It just depends. You don't have to fill out every single court, though. So if you are in a county like this court, this county, for example, let's just say only the 26th handles family protection cases and none of the rest do. You're only going to fill out information for the 26th, and don't worry about the rest. That's okay. You don't have to go into each and every court to deal with that. Okay, so now we're going to do a little demonstration of the court report and the addendum. Can you see that, Kristen? Or is it still the, let me. All right, that should work now. Okay, so here, we're going to do a little bit of a live example of the court report and the addendum. This looks a little different because I've been messing with the test site, but you won't see a green check when you're going through it. You should see a red check on court reports. So what you'll see here is you'll scroll down and you'll see your list. So we're just going to do an example in the 98th. To get there, you just hover over the court name, click on it, and then it takes you to this page. So this is a dynamic page. So it will change based on the answers that you give. So for example, in this court, let's say you had custodial parent expenditures, which we'll talk about in a minute what that means. You'll say yes. And then it will give you more questions. See, all these questions popped up. So here's some things to know about this section. You'll see here these stars under public defense, office of child, parent, etc. One thing to know, if your county does not have these offices and you said no, you're not even going to see this. All right. If you only have assigned counsel, you're only going to see assigned counsel. You won't see the rest of these things. We're hoping that'll be easier for everybody. On the old site, you saw everything and it could get really confusing. So that's our goal here. If you do have any of these offices that are down here, these last 4 rows, you will, on this section, you can only type in appointments. You do not type in expenditures. You see that that's starred here. You don't type expenditures in because there are addendums. So in the addendums, that's where you're going to type in the dollars. Here, you just type in appointments. But again, most of y'all are just going to be doing the assigned counsel. So then what you'll do is you'll just put in your information. I messed with this too much. Sorry, y'all. There we go. You'll put in your information and then you can save it. The other thing to know is that many of you also won't have these other categories: social workers, expert witness investigators, other litigation. You might. So please fill that out if you do. But if you don't, you'll just enter zeros. Okay, you do need to enter zeros if you don't have expenses in something. So you'll fill that out. Then you go to the next question. Now it's asking about non-custodial parents. If you say yes, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to pop up this box and you'll fill it out. If you say no, you shouldn't see it. See how it went away? Here's another thing. Here's a tooltip. Here's an example. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking like, I don't know what a non-custodial parent is, this will tell you what the definition of what we're asking. I do want to know, and we'll talk about this in the categories again. Our definition of these terms is a little bit different from what's commonly used out in the community. But if you're ever confused, you can always use a tooltip. You'll see them everywhere. So you have, I hover, they're everywhere. All right, so that's how this works. I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me do every single one, but you'll see the difference between yes and no. It will change the boxes that you see. And then we've got that for every single category here. And then everything will total. So right now I've only entered 23 appointments, $53. I hope you have more than $53 for 23 appointments, but that's just an example. And it will total up down here at the bottom. We'll talk about the attorney detail report, but that is currently optional. So down here at the bottom, you have the options to go back to your courts list, save your progress, or complete your step. If you get stuck, if you get called into a meeting or you have to leave or whatever the deal is, make sure you save your progress. Otherwise, you're going to have to enter everything again, which would be really annoying. Okay, so and that will just take you back to your court report. So let's do the addendum, show you that example. Oops. You can go back to your checklist to get back where you need to go. So we'll go through one of these addendums. They're all very similar. We'll just go through one. We'll do Office of Parent Representation. It's a similar kind of idea to the court reports. So it's got these dynamic questions that we have here. So if you enter yes, the same thing, it's broken up by the category. If you had yes, salary and fringe for custodial parents, it's going to do that. You didn't see that before, but it was based on your answer. And then it's just like court reports. You're going to enter in the dollar amounts here for these things. If you say no, then it goes away. And that's going to happen for every single one here. Yes or no? You do have to answer the questions though, so be aware. You will see as you work through this site, if there are places that you have not answered a question that you have to, the website's going to give you an error and you're going to have to go back and make sure that you filled out everything, like lots of websites do. So that's how the addendum works. Every question's the same. You'll see that they open yes or no. And then you just kind of fill it out as needed. And then again, down at the bottom, you're going to see the totals. You'll answer these questions here. And then if you say same thing, if you say yes, you'll get some boxes that pop up. If you say no, you won't see anything. Same buttons here at the bottom. Back to checklist will take you all the way back to the checklist. And then you're going to fill that out for every single module you see. Now, what you want is to have every module you have here to go to the green checkbox. If everything is not green, then you won't be able to move on. But once everything's green, then you do get to move on. And I'll show you what happens from there. All right, so let's go back to her. All right, is that right, Kristen? Yeah, all right. Okay, one thing to know before we talk about the submission process, and you saw that when I did the example, you will see the attorney detail report on the IDER for Family Rep. In past years, in the old iterations of the website, we didn't have it at all because it just there wasn't an option to fill it out for family protection. You will see it on the website now, but I want to make very clear that it is optional. It is not required. You don't have to fill it out. So if you don't have the information, it's okay. You don't have to fill it out. I know there are some counties that have had it since we started doing this reporting though. So if you do have the information, the attorney detail report for family protection cases, and it's not overly burdensome on y'all, please fill it out. That's incredibly helpful information to us as we try to learn to understand the system better. The attorney detail report is required for criminal and juvenile though. So I do want to make that clear. You will have to do that for criminal and juvenile on that side of the house, but you don't have to do it for Family Rep. We would love it if you could, but if you're not able to, that's okay. Okay, so once you've completed all of your modules, all your boxes are going to go green, like you see here. In this particular example, in this county, I think I clicked it so it only had a public defender office. So you don't see those other addendums, but everything is green. And at this point, you'll now see this yellow button that says review, finalize the IDER section. Once you finalize things, you're not able to make changes. So we really do encourage y'all to please review things before you submit. Now, you can fix things. It's just a little bit harder after you submit. You'll have to call TIDC. We'll have to unlock it for you. But up until this point, until it's actually submitted, you can still go in and make changes. So we definitely encourage you to go in and do a review before you do any kind of submission. And then I'm going to let Dr. Sarah explain the formal submission process to everyone.
Yes. So when you are completed with every step for the family representation IDER, you will see that review finalize button. You'll click that and then you'll come into a new screen. This screen will have on screen a summary of everything that you have answered, all the data that you have entered. And so you can either download and print it and go through what you have submitted, or you can review on screen. If you catch an error, you can click return to checklist, the yellow button, and go back and fix it. So like Crystal said, this is your moment to kind of just make sure everything is correct. You can review the whole package together. If everything is correct, then you will click this certify IDER. This green button will only appear though if you are the auditor who is if you are an auditor in our system, you are authorized to certify this step. And once that green button is clicked, it is in TIDC's hands for review.
Thank you. She explains that a lot better than I do. And that's how it'll work on all of, on the criminal juvenile side as well for the submission process. There is a separate submission process also. I want to just highlight that. That's different from the old days of last year. You used to submit the whole thing all at once. Now you can submit it in pieces. So for example, if your crim juvenile is ready to go, that one can get submitted and then you can deal with family rep later or vice versa. So they're not necessarily stuck together anymore. All right, so if you submit, like Dr. Sarah just explained, you'll go back to your dashboard and then you will see that the status has changed. So over to the right in the bottom corner, you see the IDER submission status. Family protection has now been submitted. So you now have a green button. When you go back to that module, at that point, you're only able to download the PDF and review things. So at this point, if you do have to make changes, it's okay. It's not impossible to make changes at this point. You'll just have to reach out to us and we'll have to do some unlocking on the site. But if everything's good to go, then your family protection is done. And then you can move on to the other reports. So this is definitely a change from how we did things before in the past. All right, so let's go through these categories for family protection work. For those of you that have been doing this reporting in the past, you're probably familiar with it. Always good to get a refresher. If you're new to this, we'll go through what all of these things mean. And then if you have anyone in your county that's not quite sure about what these categories mean, you can share this with them too. I mean, this really is for everyone. You know, lawyers who are filling out vouchers need to know who they represent. Judges need to know who they're appointing lawyers for. This data is really important because this is how we're tracking information, how we're identifying where needs are, how we're able to advocate for places that maybe need more support. So this is super, super important that we get these categories correct. Going back to what I talked about earlier on the method of family protection representation. So if you are not able to put your expenditures and appointments in these categories, that's where you have to answer no to that previous question. Okay, what is a custodial parent? This is TIDC's definition. Again, I want to make this clear. This is how we have decided to define this information for our data keeping purposes for CPS cases. I know that out in the world, particularly in child support court or other places, or maybe you're dealing with your own custody stuff, I know that people use these terms differently, but this is our definition for data. So what are we talking about with custodial parent? So this is a mom or a dad if paternity is established. Paternity is tricky and we could do a whole hour on that, but this is a situation where if paternity has been established, or if you have a mom and a dad who are living together. And then this is the piece that's important, and this is sort of our own definition. This is if the child is living with the parent or parents if they're together at the time the lawsuit is filed by DFPS. Okay, this is at the time of the filing of the suit. I know that in a lot of CPS cases, lawsuits get filed and children get removed, and then they're not living with their parents anymore. We're not asking about when the voucher is submitted. We're really asking about when the lawsuit is filed. Where was that child living? That information probably needs to come from your lawyer. Hopefully your lawyer knows where the child was living when the lawsuit was filed. But that's the big, sort of the big trigger if it's a custodial parent or not. I also want to make very clear, this does not include representation during an appeal. So this is when an appeal is not pending. Non-custodial parents. Okay, this can also be a mom or a dad if paternity is established, or a mom and dad if they're living together, and the child is not living with them when the lawsuit is filed by DFPS. Now, sometimes that happens. That may be less common now based on different changes in the law, but every now and then when a lawsuit gets filed, the child's not living with the parent, or maybe mom and dad aren't together and maybe the child was living with one parent and not the other. So this is all about where the child is living at the time the lawsuit was filed by DFPS. For those of you that don't know, DFPS is the Department of Family and Protective Services. They are the state agency that files these lawsuits. Okay, so here's another interesting quirk about non-custodial parents. It also will include all unknown fathers So there will be situations in these lawsuits where we do not know who the father is. That's completely unknown. We'll also have unlocated fathers. So maybe we know the name of the father, but we don't know where they are. And also alleged fathers. So alleged fathers who are in situations where paternity has not been established. So even if they show up, even if they're in court, but paternity has not been established, they're considered an alleged father. They would also be a non-custodial parent. Now, this I realize for many auditors, you're probably like, what are you talking about? These are legal things that hopefully your attorneys in your counties are able to understand and know the difference between the different kinds of fathers. This also does not include any representation during appeal, just to make that clear. All right, so non-parent conservator. This is much more rare. And it's rare because non-parent conservators do not technically have a right to an attorney. However, there are going to be some counties where the court, for, maybe in the interest of justice, feels like a non-parent conservator needs to have an attorney appointed to them. So who is this? This is someone who's not a parent, who was given legal conservatorship of the child before the lawsuit was filed by DFBS. So an example of this would be like a grandma who got a court order to have legal custody of their grandchild before this DFPS suit was filed, maybe a few years before. And now DFPS is involved and maybe has taken the child away from the grandparent. But again, it's someone who's not a parent. There has to be a court order before the lawsuit was filed by DFPS, giving that person, when I say the term conservatorship, what most people say was custody, but that's the term we use in Texas. The other thing to know is the residence of where the child was living does not matter in this situation. So if they're a non-parent conservator, they're a non-parent conservator, regardless of where the child was living. This also does not include adoptive parents. So if there was a parent who adopted a child before the lawsuit was filed by DFPS, that person's going to just be considered a parent. They're just a regular parent. And again, this does not include representation during an appeal. Okay, the next category, hopefully this is pretty easy, children. So this is a child or a sibling group. Sometimes you will have an attorney appointed to represent an entire sibling group. So you'll have cases where maybe you only have one child in the case, one lawyer, one child. Sometimes you'll have a case where there's a sibling group of 4 kids and a lawyer is appointed to represent all 4 children. That can happen. You may also see situations, depending on the facts and what's going on, that maybe a sibling group of 4, each child has to have their own lawyer. Really depends on the facts of the case and what's happening. But for you auditors, if you see situations where you see one lawyer for 4 kids, that's normal and fine. Or you might see one lawyer for separate siblings on the same case. Also normal and fine. Also, this does not occur during an appeal. Just wanted to make that very clear because we do have categories for appeal. Appeals. So this is when the representation is occurring during the appeal. So if you have a lawyer for a child who's representing a child or a sibling group during an appeal, that's going to go in children appeal. If you have someone who's representing any kind of adult during an appeal, that will go into the adult appeal category. So that's moms, dads, non-parent conservators, any adult really. It doesn't matter. We're not breaking that up. We just want to know if they're an adult and you're representing them in an appeal. So that hopefully is a little bit more simple there. Okay, let's talk about appointments. Hopefully we have gotten to a point where this is a little bit more understandable, but I do know that this was, there was definitely a learning curve on this because this is not the same as a case. And I know that a lot of y'all who have been doing this report for many years and are very familiar with reporting in the criminal and juvenile space, were used to reporting a case at the conclusion of the case, right? That's typically how things went. Well, CPS cases are very, very different because often we have many lawyers on one case and these cases can last a very long time. So we're asking that this be reported differently from criminal and juvenile. So what is an appointment? Well, this is when a court-appointed attorney is representing a parent, child, or other party in a CPS case. That's basically what it is. I want to make very clear this is not the same as a court case. Okay, a court case will give you too low of a number if you only report court cases. Again, because many cases have multiple lawyers. It's also not the same as an invoice or fee voucher. because CPS cases can often last a year or more, or sometimes many years when someone's representing a child, those lawyers are very commonly going to be submitting many invoices throughout the year or the length of the case. So if you're reporting total numbers of invoices, you're going to give probably a much larger number than is accurate. And when you look at these CPS cases, you're almost always going to have more than one lawyer on a case. It's probably very rare that you only see one lawyer on a case. And the reason why is in a CPS case, at the very minimum, you're going to need at least a lawyer for a child, because you have to have at least one child in a CPS case to have a CPS case, right? So that child will need a lawyer. And then most of the time, there's at least one parent involved who is participating in the case. And most families, unfortunately, going through CPS cases are indigent. They're living in poverty. So many parents are going to qualify for attorneys. So it's very common that you're going to see at least two lawyers. It's also very common to see more than two lawyers, depending on the facts of the case. So how do we want you to count an appointment? We have changed this. So when we first began doing this report in 2021, we asked that appointments be reported at the time of final billing. And we've learned that it's difficult, and it also provides data that's not really that helpful, because some of these appointments can last for 18 months, 2 years. Lawyers for kids sometimes are on cases for 5 years. So a lot of times we weren't getting all of the information we really wanted. So we're not doing that anymore. So no more reporting at the end when a lawyer submits their final bill. We did change this last year. So last fiscal year, we began to ask that counties report an appointment one time a year that an expenditure is paid on the appointment. So for example, let's just say we have a CPS case with a lawyer for mom, and lawyer for mom submits 5 bills during the fiscal year. Lawyer for mom is paid, I don't know, $2,000. You will report that as one appointment. And let's say mom was a custodial parent, one appointment for the custodial parent for that fiscal year. Okay. Now, if that case continues on into the next fiscal year, because that can happen, you'll report the appointment again. All right. But you only report it one time an expenditure is paid in that year. So let's do I'm going to give an example on a case. So hang with me. And I'll try to keep it somewhat simple. So let's say we have a case with a mom who's a custodial parent, a dad who's a non-custodial parent, and an infant who's a child. And each of them have an attorney that's court appointed. So baby's lawyer submits 6 vouchers in one fiscal year. Okay, they get paid 6 times. Dad's lawyer, the non-custodial parent, submits 4 vouchers during the fiscal year, so they get paid 4 times. And then mom's lawyer, the custodial parent's attorney, gets paid 8 times because they submit 8 vouchers. Well, how do you report those appointments? In that particular situation, you will report 1 appointment for the child, 1 appointment for the custodial parent, mom, and 1 appointment for the non-custodial parent, dad, in that fiscal year. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. If that case moves on into the next fiscal year, you'll do the exact same thing. Or if maybe into the next fiscal year, mom and dad have dropped off because their rights have been terminated, but that child is still in custody, then you'll report that child's appointment 1 more time. And in every subsequent year that there's an attorney appointed. Hopefully that's clear. Hopefully that's a little bit easier going forward. If you have questions about it, please reach out. Okay, so let's talk about why this is important. I really hope y'all don't feel like this is a waste of time. It's really not. This is so incredibly important. Currently, the state does not provide any financial support for family protection representation, unfortunately. However, TIDC has requested this year that the legislature give $47.5 million for the biennium to help start supporting this work. And we came up with that number based on the information that was reported to us over the last 3 years. So this is really important that we get accurate information so that we know where the need is, how much we need. We know that there's a significant need out there. We know a lot of counties are really struggling to provide these required services. So it's really, really important that we get the right information. Additionally, we're working with DFPS to increase the reimbursement of federal Title IV dollars. Federal Title IV money, it's a reimbursement and it's based on how much money is spent. So how much allowable expenses are made, then a county can get a percentage back based on what they spend. But it's important to know how much you're spending to know how much to get back. So that's really important as well. We are very hopeful that we will get money from the legislature. And so if we do, we're hoping to provide supportive funding to the counties. And so the way data is reported, and if it's accurate or not, will impact a county's ability to access the appropriate amount of funding going forward in the future. Additionally, this information impacts our ability to make legislative recommendations. So last legislative session, SB 2120 gave TIDC all this new authority and responsibility and all of these cool things we get to do for family protection now. But we need to get the right information from y'all so we know what to ask for. And so we know how much money is needed or where gaps are or where support is needed. So this is very important. So please do your best to get accurate information in so that we are able to get a really good idea of what's going on out there. Okay, so if you have questions about family protection, IDER, you can, if you have any questions about family protection at all, you can reach out to me. So that's really anything, even outside the IDER. If you're just curious about, say, I don't know, hey, can we do an Office of Child Representation? You can go ahead and call me or email me, or anyone else in your county, judges, county stakeholders, they can give me a call. If you have a specific question about data, this email inbox in the middle is really helpful. It still goes to me, but if it goes in that email box, then I know it's specifically about data. So if you're like, oh, I don't know, is this a custodial or non-custodial parent? You can send it to that email inbox and we'll know it's a data question. Any kind of website issues, so tech issues, you can send those to our PPRI. They're the Public Policy Research Institute at Texas A&M, and they handle all the tech stuff. So if you're, I don't know, struggling to log in, maybe your website's glitching and you can't get in, you can reach out to them and ask for help with your tech issues. All right, so now we're going to go into the OCA interpreters report, and then we'll move on to any questions anyone has. So OCA, if you want to take it away.
I'm on mute. Sorry, my camera was covered. I couldn't see myself. Okay, thanks, Crystal. I am going to share my screen so that we can start with the OCA portion of this webinar. If you all have questions, again, like Crystal mentioned, please drop them in the chat, and myself or Sherry would be happy to answer any of the questions that you all might have. So we have a quick, some short slides for you. Let's see my sharing. Okay, can you all see my screen?
We can see it in the PowerPoint window. So if
Okay.
you start the presentation, we might be able to see it. Perfect. That's it.
There, perfect. Thank you. All right. So thank you all for joining, and thank you to TIDC for letting us tag along with these webinars. These are some of the many new reporting requirements that came out of last legislative session. So Senate Bill 380 and House Bill 3474 of the 88th legislative session called for the collection of court interpretation services data. And the Office of Court Administration is mandated to collect this information and then publish that on an annual basis. So that is what we're going to be covering right now. The frequency of these reports are annual, and the time frame for the reports will be by fiscal year from October to September. The first report is due November 1st, so coming up soon. And that will cover data from October 1st of last year to September 30th of this year. The submission will be in TIDC's reporting portal. So again, thank you for TIDC for letting us add this section in there. And I have some screenshots here to show you what that part looks like. For information, we've put together very detailed instructions, guidance documents. We're keeping up with an FAQ document as well. So any questions that come up today, if they haven't been brought up to us before, we will make sure and update this document and repost to our website. This is the very first time that we're collecting this information, the very first time that you all and in collaboration with the clerks are reporting this information to us. So we understand it's a work in progress. But if you go to the judicial branch homepage, which is txcourts.gov, you can then go to judicial data, reporting to OCA, and then you'll see here the court interpretation services. That will take you to the homepage for this link where you'll find the instructions FAQ document. And we also uploaded a sample template. This is not the submission method. It's just to help you all track this information throughout the year if that's easier for you. Again, you do not need to use this, just however you choose to track it. Okay, so this is what information will be reported to OCA. We are separating the categories by civil and then criminal and juvenile combined. The bill calls for us to collect the number of interpreters that were appointed, the number of interpreters appointed for witnesses who are indigent, total expenditures for court-ordered interpretation services, excuse me, and the number of parties that filed a statement of inability to afford payment. And I want to know, I know that you may not have all of this information and some of it will have to come from the clerks. And that's why the bill says that it's in collaboration with your district and county clerks. Okay, so to break down the data elements that have to be reported a little more, number of interpreters appointed is literally the number of individuals that were appointed for the fiscal year. And so if your county has an interpreter on staff, you're going to report 1. If your county contracts with interpreters and it's the same 3 individuals that kind of come on a rotation, then you would just report 3. So it's not the number of times that they are interpreting, it's just the literal individual that has provided interpretation services. For a number of interpreters appointed or parties used for witnesses who are indigent. So we understand, because these are new requirements, this information may not be captured. You will have the option to enter unknown if you do not know how many of the individuals that received the services were indigent. So we just want to ease some of the panic. If that information is not collected right now, that is okay. You can enter unknown. And an example of this is if you have an interpreter on staff, or we know of situations where an interpreter is contracted just to be available at the courthouse all day in case they are needed. So they're not necessarily checking if it's because someone was indigent or not. It's just if the service was needed. So in those instances, you likely won't have the actual number of how many parties needed the service because of indigency or just needed the services regardless. So you'll have that option there. Total expenditures for court-ordered interpretation services. Literal, this is the expenditures, how much money was spent by the county for court-ordered interpretation. And in counties where you are employing someone, so you have interpreters on staff, you would include their salaries and fringe. And if it's individuals who are contracted, it is the total sum that was paid out to these individuals. Number of parties filing statements or affidavits of inability to pay. Again, You will likely need to get this information from your clerks. We know it is difficult to capture the actual number of parties, at least we know on the clerk's end. So you will just need to report how many affidavits were filed. So any filings, that's what's going to be reported. That's what we've been communicating to the district and county clerks as well. Otherwise, it may require them to have to go and open every single document to see how many parties are listed. So just the number of filings, that's what will be reported. This is a sample of our template, just if it's easier for you all to capture it on a month-to-month basis. We know some counties reached out several months ago and wanted some assistance on how to track this, and so that they could get that monthly number of affidavits from the clerks as well. So we put this together. It's a resource. You do not need to use it, or you can manipulate it and edit however you please and to whatever works for you. But the ultimate submission method is through TIDC's portal. We will not accept any other form of submission. So here are some screenshots of what that's going to look like. Down here in green, you can see OCA Interpreter's report. And so that is where you will click to enter those fields that we just went over. Here's a quick example too of when that report has not been started so that you can proceed with completion. We have the reporting instructions listed there, and we also have links. You can see it down here where it says OCA's reporting instruction can be found here. It'll take you directly to the website that I just showed in some previous slides, and you can download our FAQ document and the instructions guidance as well. It's pretty straightforward, and we have some additional notes to help you complete the information if you don't have the instructions right there with you. But you would just enter your total number of interpreters appointed. You will enter it for civil and criminal juvenile combined. I want to note your total may not necessarily add up to civil or criminal cases. And an example of that is, let's say you have one interpreter on staff and they'll cover both civil, criminal, juvenile cases. So under civil, you have one. Under criminal and juvenile, you have one because it's that one person. But under total, you will also have one. It's not going to be two because we're not going to duplicate that individual. So if your total doesn't add up, that's okay, and we're expecting that. Same here, number of interpreters appointed or used for parties who are indigent. If you do not have the information, again, we understand and that could be entered as a known. Otherwise, same case as before, we're not duplicating the individual, and we know that your total count may not equal the sum of the civil and criminal and juvenile breakdown. Expenditures, here's where you will put how much money was spent total, and broken down by civil, criminal, juvenile again. And then the number of affidavits that were submitted. This is the information that we encourage you to reach out to your district and county clerks. They will be able to pull this information since they receive all of those filings. Once again, you will have a link here that will take you to that page where all of the instructions and guidance documents can be found. And if you have additional questions that are not addressed in those materials, you can also email us at jedinfo@txcourts.gov so that we can answer any other questions that have not been addressed. Once you are done, you can click complete. Or if you need to just save and ask us a question to come back, you can click on the yellow button to save your progress. All right. I'll leave this on here for a few seconds, but I'll also drop it in the chat. Again, our email is judinfo@txcourts.gov. And I am.
All right, so if anyone has any questions, please use the Q&A function. I think we've had a few come in. We were scheduled for 2 hours. We will not use the whole 2 hours. So if y'all don't have any questions or you don't want to stick around to listen to any of the answers, you feel free to go. Otherwise, we will hang around as long as needed to answer any questions that you'll have.
All right. Hi, everybody. We're going to start with the kind of first question that has come in. Again, if you have those questions, click that Q&A button and submit it for us. First things first, we have a question from Pan Naravet. Will the Family Protection Attorney Detail Report be required in the next reporting year? Crystal?
That is a good question, and I don't know the answer to that yet. Maybe. I will just say for this year, it is definitely not required. I do think that in future years, it may be possible that at some point it will be required. But I can't tell you that in 25 it will be required. I just know for sure it's not required now. So that's the best I can give you. I'm so sorry.
There we go. The next question we have is, to be clear, the assistant auditor entering the report is not authorized to check off certify. The auditor will need to log into the system to check off the certify button.
Yes, that's correct. So because the statute technically says that the auditor or whoever is designated as the auditor type function by the county commissioners is required to be responsible for the report, we are requiring that now on the new site that the actual auditor be the one who does the official submission.
All right. Next question is an easy one. I love these. Are we able to have a copy of this PDF presentation?
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and say yes, but Crystal, I'm going to pass that to you.
Yes, I have it PDF, so if anyone wants a copy, you can reach out to me and I can send it to you. I would be happy to send that out as needed.
And I would like to note that everyone who's attending today, we do have your email addresses. We will be sending a copy out to everyone who registered for this event. I do want to note, though, if you used someone else's link to get into this event, I see a couple duplicate names in the attendees list. That's totally cool. I just want to note that only the person whose name was registered will be receiving an email with these materials. And so I just wanted to make that note from this event today. Resources in general will be available on our website and such in the coming days as we look towards launching on October 1st. So our next question is from Chanda Burns. What if you have some vouchers with custodial parent and some do not? Should you answer that question? Most have the custodial. Crystal?
So I would say if you have a voucher where it's clear that it's for the custodial parent, then you will report that in custodial parent. Now, I know that sometimes you'll see a voucher and maybe the attorney checked all the boxes. If you have a situation where you're just not sure, you can always call me. I'm happy to talk through a voucher. I've certainly reviewed some for people if needed. And then sometimes if they're just really incomprehensible, if you're in a county where the volume isn't too massive, sometimes you have to actually reach out to the attorney or the court and say, I don't know what to do with this. I need more information. But yeah, if you're in a situation where you really just can't tell based on how maybe it's blank. I know that happens too. If it's blank or everything's checked, give me a call or reach back out to the lawyer if you can.
There we go. All right. Next question is clarifying on how to count the number of appointments per year. The question itself says, so if the attorney meets with a parent 10 times, then your number is 10 for appointments?
No. That would probably be one. So if your lawyer in that situation submitted 10 vouchers in one fiscal year, that's just one appointment. One lawyer, one client, and they may send you 10 vouchers. That's very, very possible, but you'll just count that one time for that appointment for the fiscal year.
All right, so the fiscal year is the time frame that matters. It's one appointment per client per appointment for that attorney, regardless of the number of invoices or vouchers, right?
Right, per dollar. So if you pay an attorney just $1, then you'll count that once. Or if you pay that attorney $10,000, you still count it once for the fiscal year. And then just to be clear, if that case rolls into the next fiscal year, you'll count it again if you pay that lawyer again in the next fiscal year.
All right. The next question is, where will the video be? Great question, Lori Roberts. This video, as well as the videos from our other trainings, will be available on TIDC's YouTube channel. We'll go ahead and put that link in the chat here in one sec. But TIDC's YouTube channel is where you'll be able to find those videos directly. We will also have them linked from our government website page under that Submit Data and Reports page. That page is going to get a little bit of an upgrade as well, because it will have links to all the resources around this new data website launch as well. So we'll put that link in the chat here in a second. Next question we have is from Carmen Glover. Do we count court-appointed mediators in the CPS report?
That's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. That didn't come up in the last one, but thanks for asking. No, a mediator is, although they can be a lawyer, they're not a lawyer appointed to represent a party. So a mediator is technically considered a neutral body who's supposed to help the parties facilitate some type of settlement. So that's considered a fee of the court, because they're not actually appointed to represent a parent or a child or anyone like that. They are a neutral person. So even if they're a lawyer, and in some counties, you will have attorneys who are court-appointed lawyers who also serve as mediators. But if they're in the mediator position, you will not report that for our purposes.
All right. Got another question for us here. It says, do we go back from October 2023 to county clerk and district clerk to ask for the number of filings to report to OCA?
Yes, so you would reach out to them and ask them for those filings for the time frame, and most case management systems should be able to run a report for them that will give them that count for you.
Can I clarify on the mediator thing too? Because I know this trips people up. So if you have a lawyer who's at mediation representing their client, so they're at mediation representing a parent or representing a child, you will report that. So I didn't add that on, but mediators' fees for the actual mediator, you don't report. But if a lawyer shows up to mediation to represent their client, then you do report that.
Great clarifying point, and thank you, Alejandra, for that question answered. Next up, we have a question that says, we have a hard time getting court clerks to get us information. It seems like they claim that they are unaware of these submission requirements. Are they also notified of reporting submissions?
Yes, they are. And we have been sharing this information with them over a year ago now, right, Sherry? We've been to their regional clerk meetings, to their conferences, and have done some site visits as well. So if they don't have the information, and maybe they've missed meetings, conferences, and emails from us, please refer them to the website. You can send them the link. And if they have specific questions, you can send them to us and tell them to reach out to us at jedinfo@txcourts.gov, and we'll be happy to explain the reporting requirements to them and provide some guidance or assistance on how they can run that report to get you all the numbers on those affidavits.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was going to touch on. A lot of clerks will have events within their case management system. So we're recommending that they run an event report and specifically use affidavit of indigency to clarify and get those numbers by case category.
Excellent, thank you. Next question we have, will the New Year application and resolution be available soon?
Hmm.
I'm not 100% sure what that one is. Anyone got an idea on this? Deborah, I
Like
see you.
grants, maybe, Deborah, you think?
I think that's probably on the criminal side, and I think Doriana's is working on that. So yes, they'll be coming out soon. I think
Brilliant.
that's,
And If that was not the question you were asking, go ahead and get in that Q&A button and give us some clarifying on that. That would be very helpful. Next question. Are we breaking down monies by attorney still?
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm totally understanding the question, but yes, so in those categories we talked about, you also have to report by, when you go onto the website, you'll see it'll say attorney's fees, social worker fees, expert witness fees, and then depending on the type of attorneys you're using, whether it be contract or public defender or things like that, you'll report the amount of money spent for the lawyer's fees. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so you're breaking down the monies by the type of counsel, how that counsel is being appointed. And I'm going to throw this question kind of back at you. What about individual attorneys for this year?
So that's, again, that's not required. If you are not able to do that, it's optional. So on criminal and juvenile, if you've done the report before, you're probably familiar with the attorney detail report, where you report the amount spent or given to each actual attorney, right? You'll have it by the attorney's name and how much that they were paid for an appointment for, say, a felony or misdemeanor or something like that. We are now making it optional for family protection. So you can do something similar by an attorney name and how much they were paid for a type of appointment, but you don't have to do that if you're not able to. It would be great if you could, but it's really okay if you're not able to this year.
All right. Next questions is from Trisha Walters. Will an interpreter used in a CPS hearing be counted as a civil appointment? I think that one's probably for Alejandra. Oh, one moment. There we are.
Reading. Yes. So will they be counted in a civil appointment? Is that
For a
trying to look at
CPS
the
hearing.
chat. Yes. So CPS falls under the family law category, which family will be under civil. So you will count all of those in your civil section. I'll add on here probate, mental health, and guardianship. You'll also report under civil.
Brilliant. And then I believe the next one is also for you. The court interpretation report is only for any case that has a court interpreter. Is that right?
Yes. And there are some other situations that are addressed in our FAQ document and the reporting instructions. So it is for cases that have been filed. So that's what the district and county clerks would have as well, filed cases. And we have heard of different examples of when the interpreters are used. So sometimes it's interpretation right before a hearing, not necessarily just in front of the judge. So you could count that as well. We have a whole list of those scenarios in the FAQ document on that link. So it expands a little bit more.
All right, and we do have an update actually on a previous question that is specifically looking at FY25 formula grant applications. That application and resolution is live on the website right now. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to our formula grants page on the website right there in that chat for you. So if you are looking for the FY25 formula grant application, you can go to that link and find that there. Our next question. Would you count expenditures like you would the appointments? Or if 10 vouchers are submitted in the fiscal year, would you report the expenditures on all 10 vouchers? Crystal.
That's a good question. You'll report every dollar you spend. So if you spend $10,000 for one attorney in 1 year, you report all $10,000, even if that's only one appointment. So every single dollar you spend, please report it in that fiscal year. But whether it's $1 or $20,000, if it's for one lawyer on one appointment for like one client, then that's one appointment.
All right, and then we have a follow-up, and I'm just going to hit this one more time. The question is about individual cost and refers to the old website. So the old website, and criminal and the juvenile IDER, you do have that attorney detail report that reports those costs line by line with that attorney. So however much that attorney got paid in that fiscal year. That attorney detail report is optional for family protection representation this year. And then, Crystal, do you have anything to add to that? I just want to make sure we're really clear about which pieces are required and which pieces are optional.
No, I mean, it is definitely required for criminal and juvenile to do the attorney detail report. So reporting how much each individual lawyer was paid. I will just also make clear that when you're logged into the new website, you're going to see that attorney detail report. And even though you see it, it doesn't mean you have to fill it out. It's just there for you to fill out if you're able to. But if you're unable to, it's not going to stop you from going forward. It's just there as an option for family protection for the IDER.
Perfect. Thanks, Crystal. Next question. When will the IDER FY24 manual be available? That one's from Claudia. Well, we are launching the website on October 1st, so it will definitely be out and distributed at that point. Just as a note, that manual will be available, one, on our website. That's one place where the manual is generally available. We're also going to be distributing it to all of you, kind of like we did, I believe, last year, where we did a distribution to all the auditors, the list that we have, so that y'all all have a copy. But that'll be coming out kind of with that website launch closer to the 1st. So digital copy, and then kind of going from there. If you have other questions or don't receive one, please reach out to us, because I know sometimes there's turnover and who kind of needs a copy or kind of who those officials are. So if you don't receive one around kind of the early mid-October timeframe, please reach out to us and let us know, and we'll be happy to get you one of those if you can't get it on our website.
Yes, and sometimes your spam blockers will, because we send things out in this huge mailing to all 254 counties. And so occasionally those get caught up in your spam blocker or your junk email. So yeah, if you just don't have it or you can't find it, you can always reach out or check out our website. It should be there.
Our next question. Each year we have applied and passed a resolution in the CC for the reporting. Is an application or resolution required separately for CPS or court interpreter reporting for each year?
I'm not sure I understand the application question. I will say that we don't have any funds for family protection representation at this point. If you're asking about formula grants, I'm going to take a little stab here, but if you're asking about formula grants, we hope that in the future we will have some money for formula grants for family protection work. Right now we do not. So it's formula grants are still for criminal and juvenile indigent defense. Now, if your question is, do you have to do your report to get your money? Reporting is always very important. You definitely have to do your criminal and juvenile report accurately to get your criminal and juvenile money for family protection, because we don't have funds to support that yet. It's still not necessarily tied together, but it will be at some point when we do have funds, hopefully. I hope that answered the question. I think that's what it was. I'm not sure.
And Deborah, I did see you unmute. Did you have anything to add?
I was listening to Crystal, and I believe she's correct. Formula grant needed an application and a resolution, and that's on the criminal side, and we don't have anything yet on the CPS side. So I think your answer was correct on that, Crystal.
And I don't know, Alejandra, I know that our formula grant money is also tied to some reporting that the clerks have to do, the county clerks have to do. I don't know if the interpreter's report will at some point connect to that, or if because it's new right now, we're not doing that yet. I don't know the answer to that.
It is not right now. I think that's something we can discuss with TIDC for future reports. I also know, based on the grant formulas for TIDC, it's usually going back a couple of years, so it wouldn't be helpful for the immediate reports that are coming up either way.
All right. Next question's from Lori. Can I confirm that you want us to count the number of different interpreters used one time, regardless of how many different cases they are on?
Yes, that is correct. So if you had 3 individuals that provided interpretation services in a CPS case, in a divorce case, in a tax case, whatever the situation is, you just count the individual, not the number of times or the number of cases that they interpreted for.
Yeah. And just to clarify, follow up on that question, you count the interpreter based on the fact they interpreted, not the number of cases, but there is that split out within the report of criminal and civil. And so people could be counted, I'm one interpreter in a court, but I did some work for some criminal cases, I did some work for some civil cases. So those would be counted in each of the respective criminal and civil categories. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, I got one more question for us here. It's another interpreter's report question. So the question is, we don't count magistrate court, but we do count when a justice of the peace hears a bail bond hearing at the jail.
Let me look. Okay, let me check something, and I'll get back to you just a second. That's a more involved question.
No worries, no worries. While you're doing that, because the next question we have is also regarding, it looks like it is also an interpreter's question. This is just a friendly reminder to everyone who's here. If you have questions, please use the Q&A button to pop them up here so we can continue to answer them. I do see a raised, oh, the hand went away, never mind. Nope, it is still raised, beautiful. With that, Alejandra, let me know when you are ready to answer that question. Otherwise, I'm just gonna see if the hand comes back. It went away again. So I think they are all right. As a reminder, we've put links in the chat for a few things. One of those things is links to where you can learn more about the OCA and Court Interpreters Report. You also have a link to TIDC's YouTube channel where a copy of this recording as well as our other trainings will be available. And then just a reminder, this recording, this session is only really covering that family protection representation, IDER, and then the court interpreters report. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., there will be another training, and that one will be covering any questions you have, and also a walkthrough of the website for the adult, criminal, and juvenile IDER. So if you need that, there's a link in the chat where you can register for that event. Alejandra, back to you.
Yes. So the answer was for the question was on justices of the peace. You do not report any of that, but you will report any activity in which the interpreter was used on district and county cases at a magistrate level, but not for justice of the peace, just to clarify that.
All right, and if they wanted to go find that in writing somewhere, is that part of the resources that are available online?
It is, yeah.
Perfect. We do have one more question on the OCA Interpretation Services report. It says, are we only asking for the number of case filings each month from county clerk and district clerk?
Not the case filings, how many filings there were for an affidavit of indigency. It's two separate things.
All right, thank you for that. We don't have any more questions in the Q&A session right now. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and get those in before we look to wrap. I am going to turn it back to Crystal for any last announcements or notes to make as we wait to see if any more Q&As come in.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, if you have any other questions, please put them in the Q&A now. But for those of you that are still hanging around, you're free to go. Thank you so much for being here, spending your time learning about how to do this report. We really, really do appreciate it very much. This is definitely an important relationship to make sure that we're getting correct information from the counties so that we're able to support y'all with what you need. Please reach out with questions. If you think of anything after this session, feel free to email, call. We're happy to help with whatever you might need. So thanks, everyone.